What is Chris like as a grandfather?
He's really nice.
Did he give you good Christmas presents?
Yeah.
Not just paintings?
No.
Good husband?
Yes, he is.
Good ex-husband?
He's a terrific ex-husband.
Mrs. Nissen, was Chris a good son?
Wonderful.
Was he a well-behaved child?
Absolutely.
If he was so neat as a child, why are his paintings painted so loosely?
He's just a free man.
Chris Nissen and I have been friends since we met as beginning students at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts almost 50 years ago. Chris, you are just a remarkable guy, and I am honored to have you as a friend.
Well, I feel the same with you, John.
Chris died on February 1st, 2025, from complications of Parkinson's disease. His mother had died a few weeks before. Chris was 75. Alma was 100. I want you to hear him, see some of his amazing art, and learn for yourself why so many of us loved him. He was brilliant, compassionate, courageous, and very funny.
The first interview I ever participated in was at Stockton College for a cable TV channel in New York, and I was the last in line of 6 to be interviewed. So I walked in and told the guy that I was very nervous about this interview. So to break the ice, the guy turned the bright lights on and started saying, "Where were you in the night of the 24th? Where were you in the night of the 16th? Does your wife know of the activities you've been involved in?" And the sweat just started pouring down my head. The interview was a disaster. I felt like I'd been swimming. Hello?
Chris, you are in a parental crisis right now.
Nothing out of the ordinary. I'm a stern taskmaster as a father. Actually, I'm such an easy touch, it's scary.
Easy touch or not, Chris's daughters turned out great. I wanted Chris to tell me how he ended up at the Academy and to reminisce a bit about what he rightly called
Our heydays, the glory days.
You went to the University of Virginia, right?
I went to UVA and I graduated in 71. Started out as an astronomy and physics major. After a year and a half, I decided that I didn't want to do physics anymore. So I graduated as an American government major and had intended to work with the Foreign Service. But after we took the test, the government cut back all the new positions and funding for Foreign Service, so I came home. I ended up working for a computer marketing company. Catalog from the Academy came across my desk, and I looked at it and thought, I don't really like what I'm doing. I'd always painted as a hobby since I was a little kid, and I thought, why didn't I ever decide to do that? So one thing led to another, and I ended up applying to the Academy, taking my portfolio in a big trash bag. And Dick Rank, I think, was working at the Academy at that time, saw me walk in and said, "Now here's a guy who really values his work. He brought it in a black plastic trash bag." And that was my introduction to the Academy.
Chris was a star in our class at the Academy. He told me stories about 4 of the many teachers who helped him. Here's Chris standing in front of his parody of a Sidney Goodman painting from a fake faculty show that Chris helped organize.
Having Sidney as a teacher turned me on to industrial areas in the city, and we started painting down at the oil refineries. There's a beauty down there that attracts me, has to do with the abstract quality of the place. Big shapes, broad shapes, and there's usually some kind of grid of perspective. So they set up for almost abstract equations. Tom Ewing, who was a little bit of a character and eccentric, he always made us take our palettes and play with them for an hour after we were done painting. Whatever paint was left on your palette, sit there and play with it until you learned how to mix color. I think that was an invaluable lesson. And to this day, if I see a color, I know how to mix it instantaneously. I was friends with Joe Moronico, who was the conservator of the Academy. who was an absolutely great guy, a wonderful guy, who would always take us out to dinner after the openings, dinner for 20, and always pick up the bill. He knew that I loved Sergeant Payne. And one day I saw him after I graduated from the academy, and Joe said, "Chris, come here with me. I want to show you something." And he had gotten a job to restore Sergeant Payne. He took me down in the academy conservation area, took my hand, and laid my hand on the Sergeant painting and said, "Here, I know you've always loved that paint, so I'll let you touch it." And he said, "You can't tell anyone I've ever done this until after I'm gone." I never told anyone until the week after he died how he let me manhandle a Sergeant Payne. He was a great guy.
Are you still using that Merge medium that you rediscovered from Rubens back in art school?
Well, I still have like 20 jars of it, and I still open it up and smell it once a year because it reminds me of going back to those days boiling lead, litharge in Peel House, and having Arthur DaCosta come in and say, "Who's boiling lead in this goddamn school?" I'll try.
One of the things I remember Arthur DaCosta used to always stress was the importance of having the paintings be atmospheric. And I remember him specifically loving your paintings because it had that quality. How do you achieve that?
Everything in painting was difficult for me, but I think that's the one thing that came naturally. I like using a lot of wet paint. And I think by pushing wet paint together, you get soft edges. It makes a transition from one value to another, from one color to another, from one intensity to another.
Chris won a ton of awards from the Academy, including 2 traveling scholarships. He would go on to a remarkably productive career with hundreds of sales and commissions into prestigious collections. But none of that was known to the new graduate.
When you leave school, you're really so wrapped up in your painting, and then all of a sudden you're confronted with this issue of, what am I going to do? Am I going to make a living? Am I going to work for someone? How am I going to do it? The pressure becomes, do you want to go to a big gallery in New York or San Francisco or the big city, or do you want to stay where you're located, and what makes you happiest? And I think it took me a long time to come to terms with that. And what made me happiest was really the painting. Doing the painting, going to my studio, spending time there, spending time out on location, mixing the paint, smelling the paint, all the tactile senses that you get involved with.
Well known for his cityscapes, Chris eventually found a very different world to paint.
My wife and I and daughter go to Maine 2 to 3 weeks every summer. When I first started going, I looked at all the colors out there and decided, my God, there's a whole world of violets, fuchsias, reds, blues that I've never used, greens. If you're going to be a painter and you have access to all these colors, why not use them?
It would be easy for the casual observer to assume that this charming man lived a charmed life. But over the years, Chris endured enormous suffering. His first daughter, Terry, who thank goodness is fine now and the mother of 2 adorable daughters, was in and out of the hospital in her early years with life-threatening breathing issues. And then one day in 2011, a trifecta of disasters occurred. Chris and Cynthia's home was burglarized, and all of Chris's computers and digital backups of his art were taken. At the same time, his web hosting company disappeared overnight. And then Chris was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, which he joked about in my 2014 film about him.
I overheard you talking about your Parkinson's disease, and you said that whenever you get to your studio, the symptoms just seem to disappear.
Generally, when I walk into the studio, the tremors just vanish. And once I get back in the car to drive home, they immediately appear again, much to the chagrin of people driving near me.
Chris then went on to talk about how he had begun painting urban scenes again.
I took most of the paintings that I've done in the last 4 years, sanded them off, and then repainted new paintings on top of them. So the concrete dust painting has these turquoise blues coming through that have no business being there, but they look so damn good I couldn't take them out.
Where is that?
That was from a composite of photographs I took about 6 or 7 years ago. of construction sites. And I kept playing with them like shuffling cards, throw the pictures out and see how they fell together. And then eventually made a composition out of it and then went back and just went from memory. I like what was happening. I'm not sure what it means.
Years later, I learned that when Chris said that, he wasn't being entirely forthcoming. Liz Wilson said that when Chris was painting this collapsed rubble, he could envision his own life crashing down from the disease. And this brings me to why I loved him so much, because as Chris's physical life did in fact disintegrate, he never stopped living his creative life.
Hello, I'm Chris Nissen, an artist.
Here are some of the artworks he made in the final years of his life. They are as beautiful as any art I have ever seen. To pay homage to the beauty of the world, all the while you are suffering intensely, that's the act of a hero. And that's what Chris Nissen is to me, a hero of art.
So I said, you mean to tell me I can't have you make me sunglasses? You're not allowed to do it even though I authorize you to do it? No. I said, what genius in the state senate did that? I don't know what genius. What, do you have a problem with it? I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do.
Well, you should get clip-ons.
I had them, but they broke.
Oh.